want to welcome you guys to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. My name is Jerry Shockey. I oversee all the educational programs here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And for those of you that don't know, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we're all the way in northeastern Ohio, Canton, Ohio to be exact. So we want to welcome each and every one of you and thank everyone for tuning in to this broadcast. The idea behind this program, we started last year. We've had about 15 different Hall of Fame Connect from locations all across the country. The heart of the Hall of Famers really convey what it took to get into the Hall of Fame beyond just the athletic ability, because we know, like the gentlemen that we have before you today, they're all great examples of athletics, but it's more than that. It took more than that to get into the Hall of Fame. It took at the core were those 6 core pillars that you guys are studying of character: the trustworthiness, the respect, responsibility, the caring, the fairness, and the citizenship. Because one thing that can be said about most of our Hall of Famers is the God-given ability didn't lie within professional football. They would have gone on to excel at whatever life endeavor. And most of them, and many of them, as the person you had before you, have went on to excel at other things beyond just the gridiron. So this is an opportunity for you guys today to just be able to interact and chat and find out what it takes to have success in life. And as we'll talk about, success is kind of a relative term, but to work hard at achieving great things. So, but before we do that, these programs are difficult to do without great support across the country in doing this, and we have to thank our friends at Tamberg, who are now part of Cisco. Rob Reneski there actually is set up at High Tech High School in San Diego. Robert, thank you to you and your folks for helping making this connection possible so we could bring James Lofton to schools all across the country. We have to thank our friends, and don't worry, I will include you guys in this time. High Tech High School. The students that are sitting in the background there with Mr. Lofton, we will make sure. I don't want you to hurt Mr. Lofton, so you're furious with me not asking questions. So we will make sure to take questions from you guys as well. We have to thank our friends at eTech Ohio and Columbus. They're through the State Department of Education here. They're the ones setting up all the technology and bridging all the calls. I know Michelle, some of you probably spoke to Michelle on the phone, and Derek are kind of working hard behind the scenes to make sure all these connections fit. And most importantly, we have to thank our schools. The teachers that took interest in this. It takes a lot of, it's not as simple as just hitting a button and connecting. It takes a lot of preparation, takes a lot of planning. You'll probably hear those words come up more and more throughout this program today, but it takes a lot of individuals, in some cases 3 or 4 different individuals from each of your respective schools to make sure that this broadcast happens. So all the librarians, tech coordinators, principals, teachers that help make this possible, let me say thank you for all your help. And then the real stars of the show, all the students that are connected here today. We want to say thank you for connecting here today. And this is your opportunity to give a little shout out for your school. What I'm going to do is ask each school to feel free, when I call upon your school, to unmute your mics and show a little school spirit. Yell, scream, whatever you're allowed to do within the confines of your school. But let's go to, first of all, and that way not only all the students can see where the schools are coming from, but also Mr. Lofton can see where they're coming from too. I know we have our good friends in New Jersey, Gloucester High School. Are you there? That was pretty weak, Gloucester. You want to try that again?
Do we have 6 people? Say hi. Come on.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you, Gloucester. Go ahead and mute your mics there, and we'll ask all the groups to keep their mics muted until we call upon you. Did we get Dayton Public Schools? Kemp, did you guys get connected?
Woo!
I got to admit, Kemp, that was even weaker than Gloucester, so sorry about that. Go ahead and mute your mics there, Kemp, for a second. Let's go to back to New Jersey again. Let's go to our friends RT Cream Family School in Camden, New Jersey. There we go. Good job, Cream, for doing that. And let's say hello. I am not sure if they got connected yet. Let's go to Clayton, Wisconsin. Clayton High School, are you there?
I push these buttons?
Yeah. Go Bears!
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I think you guys are losers right now. Let's try that again. Clayton.
Yeah.
Go Bears!
Go Bears! Go Bears!
Thank you, Clayton. Go ahead and mute your mics. And let's go to Dallas, Texas. Lang Middle School.
Yeah!
Thank you, Lane. And, thank you. Go ahead and mute your mics, and let's go to the two schools in California first of all. I know we had in Los Angeles, Jordan High School. Feel free to give a shout out there.
Good friend.
All right. The folks in LA are representing. There we go. I see broomsticks and all kinds of stuff in the background. Thank you, Jordan. Go ahead and mute your mics there. And last but not least, go ahead and give a shout out right behind Mr. Lofton at High Tech High School. Yeah! Okay, perfect. I want to remind all the schools, obviously except for where Mr. Lofton is located, remind all the schools to keep your mics muted throughout the program until we call upon you and ask you to have your questions. And Mr. Lofton will have opening remarks here in just a moment. But before he does that, I'd like to share a little bit of information about Mr. Lofton's career, both athletically as well as his post-career, beyond just the National Football League as well. First of all, he's selected by Green Bay in the first round. He was the 6th player overall in the 1978 draft. He was known as a deep threat receiver, possessed both great speed as well as great hands, and he recorded more than 50 receptions in a season 9 different times. He was the first NFL player to score a touchdown in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, and in 16 seasons he caught 764 passes for 14,004 yards, and that mark at his retirement, those of you, especially in California and people across the country, know who Jerry Rice is, holds all the receiving records. This was the gentleman that held the career mark for most receptions in a career, or most receiving yards in a career before Jerry Rice and some others came along. He was named All-Pro 4 times, All-NFC 3 times, and he was selected to play in 8 Pro Bowls. Now that's a little bit about his on-the-field achievements. Let's talk about some of his off-the-field achievements, because I think you'll find that it's just as remarkable what he's been able to do off the field as it was on the field, going on to a Hall of Fame career. First of all, his education. And I think you'll note that he not only had athletics, but obviously had intelligence along with that, as he graduated from one of the greatest institutions in the United States, Stanford University, with a degree in industrial engineering. He's not only athletic gifted in football, but in other sports as well, as he was All-American in track and field as well as football at Stanford. And then get this, he actually competed in the Olympic trials in 1976. Honors included not only being inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but as well as the Stanford Hall of Fame, the Miller Man of the Year finalist, as well as the Packers Hall of Fame in Green Bay. Beyond his playing career, he had some stints as a wide receiver coach, both with the San Diego Chargers as well as the Oakland Raiders. But currently, he serves as a talent with, some of you might be familiar with Westwood One Radio. He's an NFL Sunday Night Football talent there. He's had his own show, the James Lofton Show, in Green Bay as well as Buffalo, Pac-10 season preview, CNN NFL preview show, NBC NFL analyst, Fox Sports Net analyst, and a host of other careers that he's had. Beyond just his professional career, meaning his NFL career and his professional career beyond his NFL career, he's involved in a lot of community initiatives. From the March of Dimes spokesman for Wisconsin, the Milwaukee Ballet board member, fundraiser for a Golden House in Green Bay's first domestic violence shelter. He's a United Way spokesman for the Green Bay Packers, as well as he served as a volunteer for the Special Olympics in Wisconsin. And he also, for those folks in Dallas, he also participated with fundraisers for Green Hill School in Dallas, Texas. And personally, beyond that, he has been married to his lovely wife, Beverly, for not 28 years, but 30 years. I got that. So 30 years. And he has 3 children, David, Daniel, and Rachel. And before we ask Mr. Lofton to share his opening remarks about character, what I thought we'd do is show you guys, take you a little ways back into the 70s and 80s, and show you a little footage of Mr. Lofton during his prime.
The great hands and even greater speed of wide receiver James Lofton made him one of the premier deep threat receivers of his. And owned one of the most prestigious records in the NFL. He retired with the most yards receiving in the history of the league. 14,004.
And if you can, all the schools, if you can unmute your mics for a second and joining me in giving a warm round of applause to Pro Football Hall of Fame member James Lofton. And if all the schools, if you can mute your mics for the time being, Mr. Lofton, the microphone is yours, sir.
This is round 2 for us. We did this earlier this morning, and I got to watch those video clips of my career again for the second time. And there was a quarterback in there with a white jersey on, a Green Bay Packer jersey, number 17. His name is David Whitehurst. Well, Jerry mentioned that I coached for the San Diego Chargers, and I actually coached his son. His son, Charlie Whitehurst, was one of our quarterbacks who's now with the Seattle Seahawks. And so it's kind of funny when you are coaching and all of a sudden the guys who you're coaching are the sons of former players and people that you know and different things like that. But it's great to be here today. We're going to talk about character a little bit. And I'm just going to give an overview of those 6 pillars that we talk about with character. Number 1, trustworthiness. Number 2, respect. Number 3, responsibility. Number 4, fairness. Number 5, caring. And number 6, citizenship. And the thing that I think about all those qualities is that they all take some form of action, that you have to be doing something to affect them. Trustworthiness, and I kind of was doing just a one-word linkage. That's something that you gain. If you're an older brother or an older sister sitting out there, you know at some point you were asked to watch your little brother or little sister, and at that point, your mom or dad had trust in you, so that trustworthiness. Respect, something that we used to talk about on the football field a lot. You respect your opponent, you respect their ability to do work, and that's something that you have to earn. Responsibility, that's something that you have to show. So when people are watching you, they determine whether or not they believe that you're responsible. Fairness, that's something that you demonstrate. You know, all these are actions, but fairness, you know, when you're doing something, whether, you know, you're cutting a sandwich in half and you cut it straight down the middle, that's pretty fair. You cut it and it's really 2/3, 1/3, it's not as fair. Caring, that's something that you develop as you go along in life. And citizenship, you know, when I thought about this one, I had a hard time grasping it, because I remember having that citizenship grade on my report card when I was in elementary school. But citizenship is belonging to something, whether it's a family or a team or a classroom, or belonging to the community, the city, the state, or even the world, being a good citizenship. And that's something that's always on display. The other thing that I believe is that, you know, we're constantly working on all these things, so you're never finished. So it's a process that you're kind of going through. Looking at me today, and I'm a big numbers person, so I'm listening to all those numbers that Jerry's talking about, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. I'm 54 years old. I've been married to my wife for 30 years, and like he said, we have 3 children. And the thing that I realized is that when I was in high school and junior high, I used to have this big afro. Well, maybe not that big, but it stuck out there a little bit. And when I would take tests or when I would study, I would pick the hair out. So I had like little dents going right there in my head. And those were habits that I had. And that was a habit that I had that was from a little bit of nervousness, and I was able to overcome that. I remember biting my fingernails when I was a kid. You know, that was another nervous habit. So, and I had a coach tell me, he said, your habits are either good or bad. And that really is the case. And you can improve on them. You can change them a little bit. Like I said, we're always evolving. So those are things that I think are important. And the other thing is, when you look at those 6 pillars under characteristics, under your character, some of them you're good at, some of them you're not as good at. But you are changing, you're evolving, and you're growing. And so you have a chance to be what you want to be, to kind of draw your own picture of yourself that you want to put out there for people to look at and the person that you want to become.
All right. Well, thank you for your opening remarks, Mr. Lofton. And the way the rest of the program is going to work is we're really just going to feed off of questions from the students. I know you've all prepared a lot of questions to ask in advance. Just to let you guys know the order, we'll just go by the order of the reservation here. Gloucester will be first, Kemp will be second, RT Cream third, Clayton will be fourth, Lang will be fifth, High Tech there sixth, and Jordan will be seventh, and we'll go in that order. Take 2 questions and rotate around. One thing I do want to ask you guys, and Gloucester, start thinking of your question, which question you want to ask. But one thing I encourage you guys, as we talked with the earlier group, is you are talking to one of the greatest football players that has ever played in the National Football League. There have been 20,000 players, over 20,000, that have played in the National Football League since it started here in Canton, Ohio in 1920. Out of that, there are only 267 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and out of that, there's only about 230 of them are actually players. So when you talk about some of the great wide receivers in the National Football League today, whoever it is that you think is one of the great ones, they aspire to be James Lofton someday. They aspire to be a Hall of Famer, to sit with that NFL alumni jacket on. And I suspect that they would aspire to be the person that he is off the field as well. Not only as a great human being, but his success that he's had off the field. So you guys have the opportunity to ask, what did he encounter in his life? What obstacles, what barriers? Did he have peer pressure? Did he do this? Did he give in? Did he have weaknesses? All these questions that you might want to ask about someone that has achieved what a lot of people would say is success in life on and off the field. So I encourage you guys to ask those questions. Just a few ground rules, like I said, we will go through. Ask 2 questions from each site. All the groups can keep their mics muted until they ask their question. And even after you ask your question, just to minimize the background noise, if you can make sure to mute your mic between questions as well, that'll make things go a lot smoother. So with that being said, our veterans in Gloucester, they connect with us quite often here in Canton. Mr. Cunningham, if your students are prepared, go ahead with your first question.
All right. What was the best advice you were ever given?
Oh, that's a pretty broad question. Best advice I was ever given. What I'm doing right there, I'm repeating the question and stalling for time. I've had a lot of people who have been real influential in my life. And my dad ended up being a single parent. And he took our 4 kids when he and my mom got divorced and ended up raising us. I had 1 older brother and 2 older sisters, and they were 5, 6, and 7 years older than me. So I was the baby and the last one. So when I went off to college, and a lot different now than it was then, back in the olden days, you didn't have cell phones. When you made a phone call at night, it cost a lot of money. And so my dad didn't make a lot of phone calls because he was thrifty with his money. But he would send me little notes. And when I was in college, like 3.5 years till graduation, 3 years till graduation. And it was kind of like a countdown. So his advice to me was, in a roundabout way, you need to plan for your future. And you need to plan to accomplish your goals. And so that advice that he gave me, just those little subtle hints, was really important for me.
Go with your second, Gloucester.
Which of the pillars do you think is the most important and why?
I think it's hard to single out one of the 6 pillars. And when I see the pillars, what I see is, I see a big dining room table. And each one of those pillars is one of the legs on the table. So every once in a while, you've had a table where it wobbles a little bit, and somebody says, oh, well, go get some paper so we can correct that little wobble. So in those pillars, trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship, one won't be more important than the other, but one can be more dominant than the other. Because you can have really big, fat legs on the table, but all you want is each leg to reach the ground at the same height so that the table's balanced. So you can have some that you're really good at, some that you're not as good in, and some that you're trying to improve in. So there's not one that's more important than the other, but the one that kind of in football that's really important, believe it or not, would be trustworthiness.
Okay, thank you, Gloucester. And let's come here to Ohio, our friends in Dayton. If you want to go ahead, Kemp, with your couple of questions.
Um, Football is many times referred to as the ultimate team sport. How do you think teamwork is basically like the best in life or something like that?
Well, teamwork is really good because of accountability. And I have a strange brain. And so when you were talking about teamwork, all of a sudden, you know what flashed in front of my mind? You've seen those high wire acts, and a guy is riding a bicycle on a high wire act, and he has a long pole, and on both the poles, they're seated like a beautiful woman. And so he's going to ride across that high wire. Now, that's got to be a lot of teamwork in there. So there are certain sports where you're really dependent upon that other person, and it's really critical. Even in individual sports, there's a certain amount of teamwork. I know that sounds crazy, but you're working with a coach, your team is being graded, or you're earning points. So teamwork is critical because of that trustworthiness factor, and someone else is expecting you to do what you said you were going to do. And so that accountability is really important.
Go ahead with your second there, Kemp.
Which team did you enjoy playing with the most?
Well, I played 9 years for the Green Bay Packers. I played 2 years with the Los Angeles Raiders, 4 years with the Buffalo Bills, and then my last year, I went to training camp with the LA Raiders. I got cut. I played 4 games with the Los Angeles Rams. I got cut. And then I played the last 10 games of the year with the Philadelphia Eagles. And what's really ironic about that is Los Angeles was my hometown. Philadelphia was the town where my mom was from. And I often joke with my friends that when the LA Raiders and the Los Angeles Rams cut me, they were banished from Los Angeles the next year. Both teams moved out. The Raiders moved back to Oakland, and the Rams moved to St. Louis. So you get rid of me and you have to leave town. But the team that I really had a great time playing for was the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers, where I first started my career. But anytime I got to play a game in the National Football League, I mean, it was such a fulfillment of dreams of, when you're a kid. Anytime you play for any team, it's a remarkable opportunity.
So let me get this straight. We've got the curse of the Bambino, we've got the curse of Bobby Lane, and we've got the curse of James Lofton. So
That's exactly right.
And let's go from Dayton, Ohio to New Jersey. Cream. I got to specify because we got 2 schools in New Jersey. Cream Family School.
My name is Tatiana. How did your character help you achieve success?
I love it that Tatiana said her name. Hi, Tatiana.
Hi.
Go Eagles!
Go Eagles. I think my character helped me in that, you talk about citizenship and being a part of something that's a little bit bigger than what you are. I enjoyed being on teams. I enjoyed being in a classroom setting with other students. And so I enjoyed doing the work that you had to do to be on a team or to be a good student in class. So those things really helped me in terms of becoming a good football player. And you're probably a good citizen since I asked you to ask the question, Tatiana.
Go ahead with your next there, Cream.
My name is Sean Cottage. What was the worst hit or injury?
His question was, what was my worst hit or injury? I had a few broken bones that were really small, and it's funny when you have those in different locations. I had one in my hand, one in my foot. It's kind of like that area of your body is really hot, and you don't really know why, and that's what happens when you have a small fracture. I was knocked out a couple of times. I never had surgery on any of my injuries from when I was playing, so I was really fortunate in that regard. And so for 16 years, I didn't miss a game at all in the NFL, so I was really fortunate in that regard.
Okay, thank you, Kareem. And let's go to Wisconsin. Did you guys get connected as Clayton School District, or are you guys connected?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
What do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
I told one story about this last time, but my greatest accomplishment, my wife isn't here watching this, is getting to raise our 3 children with my wife Beverly. And because it's not always success that you can measure right away, there are ups and downs. Your kids get in trouble, they do something good, but through all of it, you take a certain pride anytime they do something well. And all my kids were athletes, they were pretty good students, so you go to different achievement days and different things like that, and your kid might get a blue ribbon or a white ribbon or something like that. And so those things were always big to me. And it was interesting because once I finished playing, then it was kind of like, put your focus on your family and the things that they're trying to accomplish and try to help them out. You can't always do it for them. But it's funny, I was watching, and I told the students here, I watch a lot of television, probably a little too much television. And I think it's the Middle program. And it was on last night, and the son was about to break the dad's record for field goals. And the son had gotten in trouble, so he wasn't going to play in the last game. And he let him play, and the son was just all over his dad that he broke his record. Well, when they went out in the driveway and played basketball, the dad is still 8 inches taller than the son, but he's just swatting his shots away like crazy. So, getting to do things with your kids and getting to be part of your family is probably the greatest accomplishment to me.
Go ahead, Clayton, if you have another.
Yes, we do.
I
Just
have
a
a question.
moment.
Where is Clayton located in terms of how far away from Green Bay are you guys?
4 hours.
4 hours? So are you guys
West.
kind of southwest?
No, we're closer to Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Ooh, did I hear somebody say go Bears in that room? Or are you guys the Bears?
We're the Clayton Bears.
Okay, that's why the Bears, not the Chicago Bears. Glad we got that straightened out.
Yes.
Go ahead. Why don't you do it?
If you received a hit that resulted in a concussion, how do you think the 6 pillars of character would help you get through a time that you weren't allowed to play?
Well, number one, I would have to respect what the doctors were telling me, that it's to my benefit to recover from it. I'd have to be, my trustworthiness would have to come into play because I'd have to give them the correct answers and not the answers that I knew that would get me cleared of the concussion earlier. And it would be my responsibility to my teammates not to come back until then. And it would only be fair to let the guy who's second string behind me to finally have a chance to play. And the caring would come because I know that people cared about me and being a good citizen, being a good guy on the team. How's that for putting all 6 of them in there?
You should be in radio or something.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clayton. Let's go from Wisconsin to Dallas, Texas, and Lang. Got a couple of questions. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lofton. My name is Brian. I wanted to know what inspired you to play football.
Where are you guys in Dallas?
We're at Lang Middle School. We're right off of I-30.
Did somebody say Oak Cliff?
We are near Oak Cliff. We're in the Pleasant Grove area.
Okay, yeah, I know where that is. Now, he's got to ask me the question again, because I was sitting up there wondering where you guys were in Dallas. What's the question again?
All right. My question was, what inspired you to play football?
You know what, I was, just as a kid, just growing up, and when we would go to the park, or we even played touch football in the street in front of my house, there was a kid who lived about 2 doors down. One of his trees was one of the end zones, and then about 4 or 5 houses down further, there was another tree that was an end zone. So that field was about 60 yards long and only as wide as maybe 2.5 cars, and it wasn't a real busy street, so we played there. And then when we wanted to play tackle football without uniforms on, we went up to St. Andrews Park, which was just about 5 or 6 blocks away, and we played there. But I was always throwing the football around. I had a basketball goal that was hammered up on the garage of the house. We didn't have a pole or anything like that. Those hadn't been invented at the time. So I played football and basketball, and I used to joke with my dad that he prevented me from being a great basketball player because our basketball goal was only about 8.5 feet high. So when I went to shoot on a 10-feet goal, I couldn't make any baskets. But just as a kid, I just played the sports and enjoyed playing them, all of them.
Go ahead, Lang, if you have another.
My question is, when you thought a play wasn't fair, how did you handle it?
When I thought play wasn't fair, you know what? That's when you get into this thing about confrontation. And you know, when you're a kid, you know, you could do a couple things. You could play harder, which would be, I think, the correct thing to do. Or you could tell that person in a very calm way that, hey, you know, that wasn't fair. He was in bounds. He was out of bounds. I was fouled. You know, when you're playing basketball with your friends, and you know you're calling your own fouls, you have to agree with that person. And fair is what two people agree upon. And so you've got to be willing to be fair. You just don't want to grab your ball, take it, and go home. It's a good question.
And I hate to say this with folks from LA there, but maybe Kobe could have listened to that, right? So go ahead. Actually, we'll go to, I know High Tech, you had some questions. If you want to ask a question or two there. Thank you, Lang.
I have a question.
Just make sure you say it loud enough.
I was wondering what your thoughts were concerning the NFL labor disputes.
Boy, yeah.
Wow.
He wants to know my thoughts concerning the labor disputes. Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the league, and DeMaurice Smith, I know both of them, and it was funny, I talked to both of them when I was at the Super Bowl this past year, rather. And DeMaurice Smith had just said, you know, we're at war. And it was kind of a poor choice of words because, you know, there are young men who are actually, and young women who are actually on the battlefield right now who are at war. And DeMaurice Smith came out and, you know, acknowledged that he made a bad choice in using that word. And Roger Goodell said, you know, we're bargaining. And this is what people do in bargaining. They have differences. And you try and come to a conclusion and work it out. And I think they're just trying to work it out. And both sides have issues that they're trying to protect. It's much like, and I'll give you guys for an example. A lot of you probably have curfews on the weekend. And when my kids were in the 10th grade, they were able to go out one weekend night, so either Friday or Saturday. And when they're in 10th grade, they had a 10 o'clock curfew. And if they were able to abide by that curfew in 10th grade, in 11th grade, they had an 11 o'clock curfew. In the 12th grade, a 12 o'clock curfew. Well, my son, who was the middle of our 3 kids, was always a little late. So by the time he was a senior in high school, in the 12th grade, he still had the 11 o'clock curfew because he would always come in at 11:08, 11:07, just a little bit late, so we never stretched it out to midnight. And, you know, so you make rules like that, and so in the bargaining, you know, both sides are kind of trying to make the rules that they want to go forward. Anybody else behind it?
Another one, High Tech? Nothing? Okay. All right.
That's it.
Don't be furious at me anymore. I got you guys in there. So let's go to our friends in LA, or maybe they're not my friends anymore because I just threw Kobe under the bus. But go ahead, LA. Jordan High School.
Jordan, hold on one second. Before we get started with Jordan High, is this LA Jordan or Long Beach Jordan? LA Jordan. I went to Washington High, so we actually played you guys. We played the Bulldogs. We lost that game too. Yeah. LA, you guys beat us. Yeah.
If you guys have a question, go ahead.
What advice would you give a young athlete?
What advice would I give a young athlete? enjoy what you're doing. And my best friend, who actually played with me with the Green Bay Packers, graduated from L.A. Jordan, Mike Douglas. He was class of 1973, so he's older than most of your parents. But advice to an athlete, enjoy what you're doing, respect your opponent, respect your coach, and always give your best effort.
We have another Jordan. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. Our question is, did you ever think about giving up? If so, how did you deal with it?
Sylvia, good question. The guy who's sitting in the front row with the Hollister t-shirt on, I can't remember where I was. I think I was at an airport. And I was traveling around, this is about 5 or 6 years ago, and I saw a kid with a Hollister shirt on. And I'm always thinking sports. So I'm thinking, hey, that kid must be from Hollister, California. So I kind of walked over to him, you know, not as a predator or anything. I said, hey, you from Hollister? And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy. I didn't know Hollister was a clothing brand at the time. But, you know, you live and you learn. When I was in the 10th grade, I had just gone to Washington High School, and we had just finished the football season, and I went out for the basketball team. And I was on the C basketball team. And we had played 4 games, and the coach had not played me in any of those 4 games. So we went home for Christmas break, and when we came back from Christmas break, I went out for the track team. I didn't tell the basketball coach that I was quitting basketball. And at the time, I was about 5'10", about 130, 35 pounds, and I quit the basketball team, and Coach Taylor was disappointed in me at the time, but he was really disappointed the next year, because the next year when basketball rolled around, I had grown 4 inches. I was 6 feet 2 inches tall, and Coach Taylor wanted me to come back out for the basketball team at that time. And I continued to run track and play football, and I didn't pick up a basketball. I was so hurt for about 4 or 5 years. So that's the way I dealt with it, and I kind of funneled it into something else. I kind of should have been more of a man and gone to Coach Taylor and tell him I was quitting the basketball team, but that was something that he kind of still rides me to this day about.
Okay, thank you, Jordan High School, and they may have got connected because they weren't able to connect with the other one. Is Salt Fork in Arizona? Did you guys get connected? Nope. Okay, we'll go back to the top. Go back to New Jersey, Gloucester. We'll go one question from each group.
Who were your role models growing up?
My role models growing up. Good question. Now, earlier, did I hear like a Go Eagles in the background when you guys were announced, or was that the other New Jersey classroom?
That was the other New Jersey squad, but we're Eagles fans too.
No, I'm a down.
And see, what you guys don't realize, everybody else who's watching this, geographically, if you're living in New Jersey, you kind of straddle between being maybe an Eagles fan or a Giant fan, and there may even be some wayward Pittsburgh Steelers fans living there in New Jersey. But my role models growing up, I had an older brother who was 7 years older than me. And, you know, I watched him, and I remember my dad taking me to one of his football games when he was a senior. It was probably his last game. And at the beginning of the game, my brother walked out, and I didn't realize he was captain of the football team. So as I got older, I was thinking, man, if I could ever be captain of the team, I would have made it. So there were times when I was captain of the team when I was a senior in high school, and when I was in college, you could be captain. You know, the coach would pick who was going to be captains that week, and I got to do that. And the pros, the same thing, and it always made me think of my older brother when those things happened to me. So he was somebody who, you know, I wanted to, you know, emulate what he had done, be captain of the team, and so anytime I was captain or picked to be captain of anything, it always made me think of my older brother.
And Mr. Lofton, if I can throw a question in there, going along with role models, what's your take on holding athletes, someone you may not know that well, up as role models? Or
well, I think we have role models in society and in everything we do, from when we turn on the television to the music that we listen to the people who entertain us in movies. And so those role models, you can look at a lot of the positive things that they do, and sometimes when they stumble, you can look at what they do when they have to rebound from it. Some people are real defiant when something bad happens to them, and they want to blame other people and they want to point the finger, and you can actually learn from that. You can learn that, because there's something about saying that I made a mistake, and I'm going to try and correct it, and I may need some help correcting it. Because we're looking at people, and people who are suffering from drug addiction or different problems like that, they need help, and they need other people to help them overcome some of the problems. But they could be a great actor or a great entertainer or a great athlete, and you may admire those skills, but then you also realize that there are other areas in their life where they may need help from other people. And sometimes admitting that you need help, boy, that's a great step too, because that lets other people realize that, hey, I can go get help. Ron Artest, who plays for the Los Angeles Lakers, a lot of people may think, hey, here's a real crazy guy. Well, he stepped up, I think a year ago, and said, I have mental health issues, and I need to talk to a counselor, and there are lots of people out there who need to talk to counselors. And he was brave enough to go forward with his problem. So Ron Artest, in that vein, he became a great role model in my eyes.
Thank you for that. And let's go to Kemp. Dayton.
Go, man. Go.
How important do you feel accountability is on and off the field?
Are the Dayton Flyers, is that like a semi-pro basketball team there, or is that the college team?
It's a college team.
Because you guys also have the Akron Zips there close by too, don't you? Now, do you want to repeat your question since we've thrown everybody off?
There's also a pro team in the NFL called the Dayton Triangles, too, from Dayton, Ohio.
Okay, go Sam.
So put them on camera and let people repeat their question.
Sam? How important do you feel accountability is on and off the field?
So accountability is vital. You know, you're joking, I was talking about my son who had a hard time getting in for his 11 o'clock curfew. Accountability is critical. Let's say you get dropped off at the mall during the holiday season, and you're looking for that perfect gift for your mom and dad, and they say they're going to come back and pick you up at 8 o'clock. And so you're up back at the front entrance of the mall at 8. 8:30 rolls around, 9 o'clock rolls around. The mall starts to close at 10 because it's holiday shopping hours. Nobody's there to pick you up. I mean, that's accountability. And you want somebody who's going to do what they say they're going to do when they're going to do it. And it's critical. And you look at our politicians, and accountability is critical there. But it's important in everything that we do and everything that we believe in. I don't know how many of you guys have been watching the news about the air traffic controllers. And there have been a couple people who've been working that overnight shift who've fallen asleep. They've fallen asleep when jets are in the air and ready to land. And that's accountability.
Thank you, Dayton. Let's go back to New Jersey. Cream.
How did you feel when the Hall of Fame ring touched your finger?
I've got my Hall of Fame ring on. See that right there? You know, I still look at myself as the skinny-legged quarterback who played for Washington High School. So it's kind of strange that, quote, I'm in the Hall of Fame, and you know, it's a great feeling, it's a great honor, but I also know that I played a team sport. So I had to have a quarterback who was willing to throw me the football. I had to have coaches who believed in me. I had to have offensive linemen who did a great job in blocking for the quarterback. So when I wear the Hall of Fame ring, or I wear this jacket, it's really a reflection of everybody from, which is now Jesse Owens Park. It used to be Sportsman's Park. When I started playing team sports there, all the way through every team that I played on, everybody who ever coached me when I played for the Baldwin Hills Trojans there in Los Angeles. So, you know, a lot of people went into James Lofton getting into the Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Kareem. Let's go back to Wisconsin. Clayton, if you have another one.
Did you consider yourself a role model in the early years in the pros?
You know what, I guess I was a role model, sometimes up and down, because there were some things that I did that I probably wouldn't do again with the experience that I had, but you learn from those things, and like I said earlier, that when you can learn from mistakes that you make, because when you first make a mistake, you're kind of defiant about it, or you don't want to admit it, and then you are able to look back a little bit and say, okay, what did I learn from that? How going forward can I be, quote, a better person, and how does this make me stronger? My kids will tell you that I have a lot of quotes, and one of them that is, that which does not destroy you only makes you stronger. You look at the people who just went through the horrific earthquake and tsunami over in Japan, but they had a program in place where the casualties weren't as high as what they thought they were going to be because they got people out, but now those people have to put their lives back together, and they're going to be dependent upon people from all over the world to help them out. So they'll be stronger because of it, and I think the world and the citizenship, the community will be stronger all because of it.
Great question, Clayton. Thank you. Let's go to Dallas. Lang.
Did you always respect your teammates?
Did I always respect my teammates? You know what? I believe that I did. I always thought that everybody was going to give their best effort, and that's all you ask of yourself, and that's all you should ask of your teammates. And it's really hard, I believe, to question somebody's effort. I had a chance to coach in the National Football League, and I coached with the San Diego Chargers and with the Oakland Raiders. And one of the things that I would write on our board is respect is earned, it's not given away, and that I had to earn my players' respect, but they also had to earn my respect. And by me having to earn their respect, I had to do things every day to be consistent, to be accountable, and I wanted them to give me their best effort. And it's funny, when players get injured a little bit, sometimes guys will say, well, I can't go, or some guys will try and go when they are injured. They'll try and go out to practice and try and play. And I used to always tell them, nobody can really judge your injury unless, you know, the bone is sticking out through the flesh or whatever, because there are a lot of little small injuries. And just give us the best effort. But if you're really hurt, just tell me, and I'll respect that. And so you talk about respect. Once I knew somebody was going to work hard for me, and if they told me they were injured, I always believed it.
Thank you, Lane. And right behind Mr. Lofton there, High Tech, did you think of another question you guys wanted to ask? Put you on the spot back there.
Here you go for it. Oh, okay. With which quarterback do you think that you had the strongest bond with?
The question was, which quarterback did I have the strongest bond with? When I was with the Buffalo Bills, we played in 3 consecutive Super Bowls. The team played in 4 straight Super Bowls. Didn't win any of them, but still a great accomplishment to get to those 4 Super Bowls. And our quarterback with the Buffalo Bills was a guy by the name of Jim Kelly, who is also in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I also jokingly tell people that quarterbacks are like wives. Everybody has just one. And Jim Kelly, and we had another receiver by the name of Andre Reed, and they were really the combination there. So my quarterback was a guy that I played with in Green Bay, and his name was Lynn Dickey. So Lynn Dickey was my quarterback. Andre Reed and Jim Kelly, you know, they were a pair, and Lynn Dickey and I were a pair.
Thank you, Tech. And let's go back to Mr. Lofton's roots there in LA, and let's go to Jordan High School.
What do you do when peer pressure or distraction jeopardize your future success?
I heard the word peer pressure in there, and peer pressure can be positive or it can be negative. And see, what you want to be the positive peer pressure. You want to be the group that is doing the right thing, and you want to try and impart that on your circle of friends, because it's really hard to influence people outside of your circle of friendship. So let's say you have 6 friends, and you know, you guys have come up all the way since elementary school, middle school, now you're in high school, 10th grade, and all of a sudden you see one of your friends who starts and they pull out a pack of cigarettes. You go, what are you doing? Don't you watch all these commercials about what cigarette smoking does to you and all that? Or it could be alcohol, or it could be drugs, or it could be something really serious. So that group right there has to be positive in their influence over that other person. Because there are a lot of negative things out there that you get bombarded by, and that everybody assumes that, oh, yeah, it's really easy to do the wrong thing. It is easy to do the wrong thing. It's a lot tougher to do the right thing, but your group of friends, those 5, 6, 7 friends that you have around you, you guys got to be positive and lift each other up. That's what you got to do. And that's what real bulldogs would do, right? Yeah! Right.
I think
Thank
we have
you,
one
Jordan.
more question.
Oh, yeah, go
we
ahead.
have one more question.
What was the loudest stadium you ever played in, and how did you adjust? How did you focus to play in?
Well, what's funny is the stadiums are always real loud, and even as a broadcaster, you know, because I work up in the booth sometimes, and sometimes you work down on the sidelines, and it can be so loud on the sidelines that you can't hear yourself think. This past Super Bowl, I worked on the sidelines with the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they had Black Eyed Peas at halftime, which was pretty good. But you know, it can be so loud on the field that you can't hear the quarterback calling out the signals when you're playing wide receiver out to the wide. So you have to just watch the football, which they tell you to do anyways. And when that ball moves, that's when you get snapped. Where are they going?
They're coming back.
Okay, they're coming back. But yeah, it can be loud, and it gives you a lot of excitement. And you know, it's funny because you look at all the sports, you look at football, you look at basketball, you look at baseball, and they're always really loud. And then you think about golf, the ball doesn't move, but you have to be absolutely quiet for him to hit the shot. So that's always been a hard one for me to figure out.
Thank you, Jordan High School. Let's go back. I think we can probably go maybe one from each school to close things out. If we can go to Gloucester.
How were you able to play at the highest level for 16 seasons?
You know what, and this is going to sound real corny, I enjoy practice, and I also, and I know that you guys in Gloucester, which is close to Philadelphia, you've heard the Allen Iverson deal about practice. But I enjoy practice, and I also enjoy working out during the off season. So those were things that I enjoyed, which made the game easy. And I played for 16 years. I would play for another 4 or 5 if my body had held up, and if the defense said they wouldn't hit me. But I just enjoyed playing.
So yeah, students don't use a response. Studying. We talking about studying? Like Allen Iverson. Practice. Let's practice. Thank you, Gloucester. Let's go to Dayton, Ohio. Kemp?
Rihanna.
My name's Rihanna, and my question is, what are some situations or events that took place in your life that you would say had a significant impact on your character?
I'm trying to think of, I know I had 2 older sisters, Angelica and Ramona, and I remember my younger sister, well, she's older than me, but the younger of the 2, I remember her teaching me how to write my letters. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but I just remember we were living in Philadelphia at the time. We were in the basement of the house, and I remember her showing me, because she had wonderful penmanship. And I remember her showing me that. And so, you know, when somebody does something to help you out, you don't know when it's going to pay off or when it's going to trigger something in your mind. But to this day, when I have to write something or do something like that, and I think of my penmanship, it always makes me think of my sister who helped me learn how to write when I was a little kid.
Thank you, Dayton. Cream, Camden.
My name is Samir. How much harder is it to play each week at the end of your career than at the beginning?
You mean when I was old and they were trying to get rid of me? You know what? And I hear this from, quote, veteran players, you know, a guy who's played 12, 13, 14 years, that they really cherish it even more. It's, you know, like the kid who, he loves jelly beans. And he's got, you know, 50 jelly beans in front of him. He's sitting there eating them as he's watching a movie. And he gets down to those last 3 red jelly beans because they were all his favorites. And so you really savor those last ones that you have at the end. And so when you're a veteran player and an older football player, and you're getting down to what you think are going to be your last football games, you really appreciate that, because once you stop playing and you're no longer part of that team or no longer part of that league, you don't get a chance to go back and enjoy it. So enjoy those jelly beans.
My 3-year-old son does not savor his jelly beans at all. So let's go ahead and let's go to Clayton, Wisconsin. One last question from you guys.
Did you ever do anything with your engineering degree?
You know what? I believe that I have, because I look at football with a real analytical mind, and still my problem-solving skills. When I look at things, I'll write them out, I'll chart them, and look at them like that. My garage is really neat and well organized, and I think part of that is my engineering background too. So, but I never worked in that field and a job outside of football.
Great question, Clayton. Let's go to Dallas. Lang, last question from you guys.
How does your attitude help in football?
Is that going on in Lang, or is that my attitude helped because you know, I hate to sound like being corny, but I always was positive. And I had a coach who told me, he said, "What's the most important play in football?" And so, you know, guys are raising their hands and going, "Pass to me," or "trap." He said, "No, the next play. The next play is always the most important." And by that, what he was saying is, the next thing that's going to happen in your life is the most important thing. I was at a conference once, and a guy was giving a talk, and he said, "Something good around the corner is coming for you." And by that, what he meant is there's going to be something good. It might happen when you're 29 years old, when you're 39 years old, when you're 19, when you're 49, but there's something good that's going to happen. And you just have to be prepared and ready for it to happen, and to take advantage of it when it does happen.
Thank you, Lang. And Tech High School, one last one from behind Mr. Lofton there.
I have one. To what standard should they gauge personal achievement in the NFL?
The question is, to what extent should they gauge personal achievement in the NFL? Well, fantasy football is huge now. So we look at what a player does individually a lot of times. But really it's about teamwork, and it's about what you can do to make your team better. And I think a lot of that gets lost a lot of times because we do have a lot of people with me-first attitudes. And in the media, we're a little bit to blame for that. We put the camera on guys when they're pounding their chest. You know, when Sammy Sosa did that the first time, it looked kind of cute. But now when everybody does it and they're just focused on themselves instead of their teammates, you lose a little bit of it. So if you put your team first and you really concentrate on making your team better, you'll become a better player.
Thank you, Tech. And to close, I think it's fitting to close out the program as the school in LA to ask the last question there. Go ahead.
How do you deal with distractions?
You mean like when somebody in a yellow sweater walks in front of the camera? No. You're going to have distractions in life. You know, I've heard people describe life like a roller coaster ride. And, you know, you really tend to hang on when you're going down and it's going fast and it's going around a curve. When it's just chugging up a hill slowly, you know, you got time to look around and to observe the scenery. But when you're going through that loop-to-loop at Magic Mountain, everybody says look off to the side so you can watch the world turn upside down. Those are distractions, and you've got to have people who are about getting you back on course, whether it's your parents, whether it's the instructors, whether it's somebody in your church, somebody who's going to get you grounded and get you going back in the right direction, because we're all going to get off the path and do something that maybe we wish we had not have done. And that's when those people around you, the people that care about you, are going to forgive you and help you get going back in the right direction.
Mr. Lofton, I know you've shared a lot of, and especially a lot of advice for these young people out there. Are there any closing remarks you'd like to share that maybe we didn't touch on?
Well, I think when I first started talking, I talked about not being finished, and because we're kind of a work in progress. So when you're 18 years old, when you're 17 years old in high school, we had some middle schoolers, you're not finished. You don't know what you're going to become. You don't know what you're going to do. But a good question to ask yourself every once in a while is, what have I done to help somebody else out? And I think we focus on ourselves so much, we forget about helping out somebody else. So when you can ask yourself, what have I done to help out somebody else, and you have an answer, you're doing a pretty good job.
And I think if we all can answer that, this world will be a lot better place for that. So great words of advice there.
Your conference is scheduled to end in 2 minutes.
And let's everyone unmute your mic.
Lang in Dallas again.
Lang, your conference is going to end there, Lang, so we better hurry up. If everyone can unmute your mic for the time being and join me and give a round of applause saying thank you to Hall of Famer.